Well. Kansas dominates Baylor. Kevin, are we back?
I think
Sorry.
I'd be back.
I didn't plan this. I didn't plan to tee you up for this, but yeah, the question is, are we back? Pay heed, all who enter, and beware this live edition of the show. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty, brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible, member FDIC. Look, folks, it's a live production. I don't always tell Kevin what I'm going to do. Sometimes I just try to throw up a lob for him, and unlike Flory, sometimes he misses.
I did not finish it. I was trying to think of the John Wick line. I'm pretty sure I'm back.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking I'm back,
but I butchered it. Yeah,
I'm
I
thinking
did not do well. You lobbed that thing up there. It was on the fast break, and I put that thing off the back iron. So I did not help you out on that one.
That's okay. Because Flory did catch the lobs when they were thrown his way for Kansas tonight. Kansas wins big, 80-62 over Baylor at Allen Fieldhouse. And Kansas may be back. If you are joining us live, you should be doing three things as always. 1, you should share a comment. 2, you should like the video. And 3, you should subscribe to the channel right here at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN. Thanks so much for joining us tonight on a Friday. It's probably pretty enjoyable because Kansas got a big win. Shout out to Dave saying, paid bitches, you're damn right. Paid fellas, rock shock from Derek as well. Philip is saying, you guys are like Darren and Muffin trying to share the ball. Yeah, look, again, like I said, sometimes it's smooth, sometimes it's silky smooth, like Darren Peterson's jump shot. Other times it's a little more herky-jerky.
It was actually like when El Marco threw the ball to Darren and Darren was checking out of the game.
Yeah.
And I wasn't looking, and the ball went out of bounds for the turnover. That was what I did. So Nick did what he was supposed to do. I just wasn't paying attention.
Well, it was another fast start for Kansas tonight at Allen Fieldhouse against Baylor. Jumped out to a quick lead. So quick, in fact, that Scott Drew had to call a timeout 67 seconds into the game. I couldn't tell you the last time I've seen that, but it was an impressive performance for Kansas. Things obviously got a little hairy towards the end of the first half. Baylor ends up taking a 1-point lead, 37-36. But from that moment, Kevin, Kansas then went on an extended 21-3 run that ended the first half and started the second half to eventually go out to a lead of 57-40. And from there, they never looked back. Big win for KU. Darren Peterson was outstanding in the first half of this game. He had 20 in the first half, I believe, for KU. He was fantastic, was hitting everything. And then obviously Flory Bidunga was sort of the story of the game in its totality with what he was doing, running the floor, getting dunks, had a crazy little spin move where he laid it up and in at one point, grabbing rebounds, finished the game with a double-double, 11 rebounds. I was trying to see, he was officially credited with 4 blocks, I think. I was trying to find how many.
I think Flory finished with 5.
5 blocks? I was trying to see. Okay, 5 blocks.
Because he had 7 stocks. That's the term for steals plus blocks. And so that's ridiculous. That's absurd. That shouldn't be allowed. Flory needs to go straight to jail right away. And let's hope, that he's able to get out of jail in time for a Colorado game next week.
Travis here in the comments says, if we get 2 convincing road victories next week, I'm ready to say we're back. Though anytime I watch DP work, I don't question it at all. Yeah, Darren Peterson, I think, seems to be 100%. I mean, speaking of back, he is 100% back. I don't think there's any doubt. And
amazing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you combine what he went out and was doing in the previous game against Iowa State, when he just tried to absolutely yam on a couple guys at various moments, and then obviously tonight, I mean, just incredible. He was so smooth, so dynamic. Every time he got to a spot, you knew it was going in, and it did. He finished the game 11 of 13 from the floor and was just outstanding. There were a couple moments in the first half, Kevin, where I got a little nervous, where I felt like KU kind of reverted back to what we'd seen from them previously with Darren Peterson, where there was a lot of standing around, get the ball to Darren Peterson, get out of the way, right? But they kind of worked through that, got over that, and then obviously ended up going on that run to end the first half and to start the second half. And Dave with the comment here said, KU's got way better at taking a punch than hitting back. And that's exactly what happened tonight, right? Because there were various moments throughout the game, especially in the first half, where Yesufu and Carr were both on fire. I mean, hitting some very, very impressive shots. And they obviously ended up taking the lead, late in that first half, and Kansas was able to bounce back. They retake a 6-point lead heading into halftime, which I think was pretty significant. And then obviously they carried that into the second half.
Yeah, and I think even when the ball wasn't in Peterson's hands, you saw a lot of one-on-one sort of during that stretch where KU wasn't playing as well. And when KU was playing well, the ball wasn't sticking. They were moving the ball around and different guys. Obviously Flory got some fantastic looks, which is part of his performance. I felt like, though, even when Baylor took the lead, it felt to me unsustainable for Baylor, because it felt like you're getting all of this from two guys, and it didn't feel like it was something that was going to continue carrying on. I think Yesufu was 3 for 4 from 3 at one point. He's not a great 3-point shooter, and so you kind of figured you would have some regression to the mean there. He probably wasn't going to go 6 for 8 against you, and so Baylor takes the lead. All of a sudden, you finish the half 7-0 from that point. Then you wind up, I think, going on, I believe it was a 22-3 run, including that 7-0 part, and it was never close again. And so we always talk about on this show, and quite frankly, I say this, it feels like every time, Nick, where I say, I don't want to keep comparing to the last two teams, but the last two teams, I think, really struggled in that 8-minute stretch where you had the 4 minutes to end the half and the 4 minutes to start the second half. That's such an important string. And I think when you look at what Kansas did tonight, ending the half the way that they did, getting that momentum back, the lead, that 7-0 run, and then basically putting Baylor away to start the second half, that was about as good of a stretch there in that time period as you would have wanted. It was just a terrific showing.
Yeah. And again, excellent job for them to bounce back, right? Because I think you would have seen teams of the past maybe crumble in that situation. And this is now not once, but several different occasions where we've seen this KU team overcome some adversity. Obviously, the TCU game, they overcame a lot, tend to come back to win that game. This game, again, they dealt with it in the first half, responded, and then obviously, put the pedal to the metal in the second half and put away Baylor. And Baylor, unfortunately, just as you said, it really did feel unsustainable because they didn't have anybody besides Yesufu or Carr doing anything. I mean, That was it. That was their offense. They were not able to generate much of anything else beyond that. Nobody else, I think they had one other guy scored 9 points. Nobody else scored. They only had 5 total scores for the game. 5 guys scored in the entire game for them. And yeah, it just felt unsustainable as they progressed. But Kansas obviously had to counterpunch, right? If KU doesn't respond, then maybe they're able to keep building off that. But I want to specifically, there's people in the chat that are talking about this, and I think this is obviously the main storyline of the game from tonight is Flory Bidunga. And I just want to ask you, what do you think was different tonight that was able to unlock him in the way that he was unlocked for this game against Baylor?
I think Baylor's bad inside. And I'm not trying to take away from Flory's performance at all, but when we looked at this game heading in and said, where could KU sort of butter its bread in this one? Flory would have been my sort of hawk to rock or however you want to put that, because this was a game that Flory, quite frankly, should have done really well in, because there was a reason Baylor went out to get Najee, was because they didn't have good players and didn't have depth at those post spots. And so this was a game you felt like going in, Flory should be able to establish himself. I'm not going to say that I expected Flory to play this well, but I definitely thought, hey, this is a game that Flory should have a 15-8, a 17-9 type of game. And obviously, he was even better than that. It did kind of crack me up. Flory did make a decision that worked out for him, but I was thinking at the time, no, yes, was when he had a dunk, there wasn't really anybody around him under the basket, and he kicks the ball out to Elmarco Jackson for a 3, and Elmarco made the shot. And so it worked out, but it was also very much like, man, you got the 100% shot right there. Take it rather than kicking that thing out to Elmarco. But it was one of those nights where things went really well for KU. Things went really well for Flory. And I think as well, when you look at Darren Peterson, there are going to be some people who maybe didn't watch the game or wanted to see Darren Peterson get more run in the second half, because you want to see the minutes build up, right? You want to see like, okay, Darren had 34 minutes. He didn't look that bad, whatever. From my point of view, you don't run him out there if you don't have to. And this was one of those games where, with the way that KU was playing, with the way they pulled away from Baylor, you didn't have to put Darren Peterson in, for that last, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, or whatever it was in the game. You just didn't have to. And so I think it was a pretty nice thing to be able to see Darren Peterson play the way that he did. He looked 100% back. I mean, he was so explosive. You saw the footwork, the NBA moves. He showed sort of the whole, the complete package. But at the same time, you didn't need to rely on him with 5 minutes left. And if you had him in at that point, being up 20 points, and he winds up suffering a setback or something like that, that would be a lot worse than letting him rest.
Yeah, he plays 23 minutes in the game. I saw somebody in our live chat comment earlier saying that, he didn't finish the game. Guys, KU was up 20. they didn't need him to finish the game. Like, what? Yeah, sure. He scored 26 points in 23 minutes. It was 11 of 13 from the floor and was just silky smooth in everything he did, and was a great, you didn't need him at that point in the game. As it relates to Flory, and I think some people in the chat have pointed this out as well too. With Flory, the big thing was when he wasn't really being as productive, especially earlier in conference play, I think it had more to do with the fact that KU wasn't really emphasizing trying to get him the ball, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And Bill Self even kind of talked about this a little bit earlier in the week. Like, you need to get it. You need to simply get him the ball. Just feed him the ball. Feed him and/or Tiller the ball. And against Iowa State, you saw a lot of dig-to-dig passing between Tiller and Flory that was very successful. And then tonight, obviously, it was just lob city with Flory and anybody who was willing to throw it up for him, right? There was a play where I thought Darren Peterson was going to shoot a three, and instead he just lobbed it up for Flory, and it worked out. So I think that was the big difference is Flory just simply was getting the ball more. And it was pointed out in the comments, Flory touched the ball on a lot of possessions for KU tonight. And I think that was the difference. And I think that needs to be sort of the standard going forward. Because Flory, I don't think Flory he's obviously not Hunter Dickinson in the sense that with Hunter Dickinson, KU could just dump it into him and he could go one-on-one and try to score, right? That's not exactly what Flory is, but he still needs to have the ball, right? He still needs to have a chance to get the ball in whatever way that he can. And tonight, I think we saw a lot more of that. And I think some of it had to do with probably what you pointed out as well, Kevin, which is the fact that Baylor just simply is not very good on their interior, right? Like, yeah, that's a weakness of theirs for sure. And it really has been a weakness of Scott Drew teams for a while now, right? I mean, they've really been more of a guard-oriented scoring type of team ever since basically they won the national championship. And so KU was able to capitalize on that. So I'm not 100% sure if what we saw tonight is like totally replicable against every opponent KU will face, right? Like when they run into an Arizona or a Houston, I don't know that you're gonna be able to see KU do what they did tonight against Baylor, to that same level. But this was a great example of clearly they did the scouting report, saw that this was going to be something that where, they could really capitalize. But I do think going forward, you see the results of being able to get the ball inside to Flory, right? It's clearly it opens things up for the offense even more. Getting the ball inside to Bryson Tiller. Derek in the comments mentioned, Bryson Tiller developing a bit more of a mid-range game. Bryson Tiller, I thought, played a really strong game tonight as well. And so that was really hot,
which is so huge for him. Like when he attacks the glass, rebounds like that, he also had 3 blocks. He missed a couple shots, but I mean, there was one shot that he missed where he had just a terrific take to the rim, off the dribble. And it was just kind of like, that's the Bryson Tiller that you need to see, whether he makes the shots or not. That's what you want to see. I also thought, Nick, KU ran some really cool stuff tonight. I think did. When you look at some of the stuff they ran to get Peterson looks, I thought it was nice. Obviously, the Peterson Flory pick and roll is what we've all wanted to see sort of all along, because Peterson's going to attract that crowd and he should be able to create things for Flory. But the other thing was, remember when Council had the ball like on the wing, gave it to Peterson, who hit Tiller on the little slips screen, and Tiller wound up getting fouled. I thought KU's offense and the things that they ran were better maybe, and they were executed better too than what KU has had in recent weeks, and that was a pleasant surprise. I don't want to say surprise, a pleasant step forward from maybe where they've been.
Yeah, there was also a really nice set in the second half where they got it to Trey White on the perimeter off of a screen, and Tiller just slipped to the rim, and Baylor just lost him entirely. Yeah. And it led to a nice little pass and an easy play. So, yeah, that was nice to see, right? It felt like Kansas was a lot more crisp offensively against an admittedly below average Baylor team, and probably in terms of defense, I should say.
Sure.
Defensively, probably one of the lower defenses in the Big 12. So that was really nice to see from Kansas. On the other side of the court, besides Carr and Yesufu, Baylor didn't really have anything. And so that made, I think, Kansas' defensive night a bit easier when they were able to shut those guys down. But yeah, a really, really impressive performance. Obviously, Darren Peterson outstanding in the first half. Flory was pretty dominant over the course of the game. And again, I think Flory, this is not a game that I think KU is going to be able to exactly replicate with Flory over and over again, but it should open the eyes to say, okay, if you get him the ball, if you throw it to him and he's able to create and draw more attention, right, or run that pick and roll, like you said, there's going to be a lot more opportunities for him to score, and there's going to be a lot more opportunities for other guys to score as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think, Nick, in this one, Baylor got a chance to stat pad a little bit, and I'm upset about it because Agbim, wound up being Baylor's third leading scorer with 9 points that you mentioned, had all 9 points in the second half. 2 of his threes came in the final 4 minutes. KU, I think it was Derek brought up the fact that KU had only 4 turnovers. They only had 2 up until the final couple minutes.
Yeah, for like 37 minutes, it was only 2. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, when you're not turning the ball over, when you're executing your offense that way, and when you're making offenses 1 or 2 dimensional the way that KU was in this one, it was just the perfect formula to come out and I don't want to say do what you were supposed to do, because Ken Palm predicted that KU would win this game by 8. And so KU actually exceeded what they were supposed to do. But at the same time, I do think that that's a good way for this team to kind of go out and establish itself and put itself in position to have the Rock Chalk chant, said with a couple minutes left in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was started with 2 minutes left. Yeah. And you're right about the stat padding too, because Kansas was up, I think 80-56 or 80-57. And then Baylor ends up getting a couple shots. Yesufu hits one late as well. So I agree with the stat padding point as well. I think Baylor probably added a little bit more than what they really should have gotten down the stretch.
Would have been nice to have 2 back-to-back 20-plus point home wins, but Baylor did get Yesufu got a jumper late working it against KU's backups to get it to 18. It's like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah. I'm seeing some comments about El Marco. We haven't really touched on Trey White. I want to talk more about Bryson Tiller as well. So let's do all that. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk more about some of those guys, what else we saw from tonight's game. As a reminder, if you're joining us, be sure to be doing 3 things. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe here on Kansas Jayhawks KCSN, subscribe, like the video, and also share a comment. We love seeing all your comments. We'll react to those. If you have a question, if you have a thought, share it in the comment section. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk more about this game coming up next.
Hey, what's happening, people? It is Benny Heiss, KCSN betting analyst. And while the Chiefs may not be in the playoffs, that doesn't mean there is not plenty of action to go around for the rest of you that are still crazy fans of the National Football League. And with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, it makes every playoff moment feel bigger. So whether you're looking at individual matchups in the wild card, or for a possible Super Bowl matchup, or for futures come postseason time, DraftKings has your back. And they also have your back with early exit protection. If the player in your eligible NFL prop goes down at any point in the first half, guess what? You can still get paid in cash. What an opportunity. What a way to be able to enjoy the playoffs and not worry about anybody that you include in those props going down, especially early on, and ruining the rest of all of your legs. So here's what you do. You download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use the code KCSN, that is code KCSN, to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Remember, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. You must be 21 plus in most states, void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
This is the Paid Podcast, a live edition of the show tonight on Friday night, shortly after Kansas steamrolls Baylor down Fieldhouse 80-62. The Jayhawks may be back. I'm just saying. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank. If you're just joining us live for the first time, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to like the video and also share a comment. Kevin, Dave has a very important question for you. Where's the fireplace? What happened? New background.
Actually, it's kind of funny. I mean, not funny. It kind of sucks, but we got some water issue stuff like in the fireplace, so we're having to rip that wall out and have somebody come out and take a look at it. So that's no fun. So you guys get the desk complete with the Washburn helmet behind my head and a few other things here for a little while.
Hey, shout out to Brett Ballard, head coach of Washburn, and they're pretty damn good. So that's another
Coach Watkins has the football program, I think, on the right track too. So yeah. I saw a comment here before we took the break about Elmarko Jackson from Philip Pearson. Elmarko's the glue guy. Yeah, I kind of want to lump in this conversation. I think Elmarko and Jamari probably should be in the same conversation here as those two guys that are doing a lot of the dirty work for Kansas. And I think beyond that, those are the types of players that Kansas fans have been clamoring for so long in this new era of college basketball. Program guys that develop through your program that you kind of get to know a little bit over the course of their careers. That's what you've got in Elmarko and Jamari as two really, really strong glue guys. Elmarko Jackson had a couple really nice steals tonight. He ends up hitting the three that you mentioned earlier off the pass from Flory as well. You know, they weren't really scoring. Elmarko had Elmarko had 7, excuse me. Jamari McDowell had 3 on a 3 he hit in the second half. But yeah, those two guys doing some dirty work, making plays. Elmarko Jackson had some steals tonight again as well. And they've been playing really, really well. And we've said it before. We talked about it before with Jamari McDowell, but Kansas has really, really needed Jamari McDowell because they have not quite gotten the production, obviously, that they were expecting or hoping for out of Jaden Dawson and Cole Rosario. And Jamari McDowell has stepped into basically that same role as being sort of the guy on the perimeter that can knock down some threes. He's been excellent. And tonight, both those guys played really well. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jamari McDowell, if you said coming into the year that he was going to help with your ball handling and make 43% of his threes, you absolutely would have taken that. And then when you add Elmarko Jackson, I thought one of the things that was really impressive with Jackson, you know, obviously he got hurt by the Flory tip in, although it looked like the angle that showed directly under the basket looked like Flory maybe didn't touch that ball. But
yeah, there were a couple weird reviews tonight.
Elmarko's athleticism is really playing up right now. And when you look at the Tennessee game, he was able to attack against a really good team and get to the rim over and over again. They just had no answer for how quick he was. And I think he kind of parlayed that into, okay, I'm going to get a piece of the paint. I'm going to kick out to other guys. And he went on a nice little run where he was dishing out assists all over the place, had a 2-game stretch, I think, where he had 9 assists and 0 turnovers. But now, Nick, you're starting to see him attack the basket again. And I think watching this game, this felt like a game where Elmarko could get to the rim sort of whenever he wanted to. And I think it's a check mark to his credit that he's not overplaying that. You know, he's not going out and, okay, I'm going to get 12 shots up in this game. But I also think that that's something that's been valuable for this team, that he's been able to step in and supply that. And you talked about McDowell making outside shots, being able to help with handling the ball. And how about Jaden Dawson getting a little bit more time in this one? He had a couple nice takes. Neither one of them went in. Made a 3, obviously, that was one of the bigger shots of the game. I would love it if Jaden Dawson could start giving himself a little bit better chance to get minutes here alongside that group, because Kansas can use sort of all of those guys firing at once.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And that's kind of what you brought in Jaden Dawson to be, right? Was sort of that bench scorer, spark plug type of player. I will say tonight, Kevin, Jaden Dawson, since the cornrows, was bad for me because he looked exactly like Trey White. There were several times where I was like, is that Trey White or is that Jaden Dawson? But yeah, Jaden Dawson, he got quite a bit of run towards the end of the first half, actually, which was coincided with Baylor kind of coming back, but then he ends up hitting a 3 towards the end of the first half that helped KU then get back to that 6-point lead. So yes, I think you would love nothing more than for him to start working his way into that conversation of being a guy that you can come off the bench and knock down some threes. But like Travis's comment says here as well, Jamar McDowell, I think, has now earned the respect of, hey, if he has the ball on the perimeter, he can knock it down. And he's been doing that at a pretty high level now for a good majority of the season. And so I think you just kind of have to expect that out of him. But you're right. Absolutely. I think for KU, big picture, like long term, you definitely still want, and it seems like at this point, really, maybe Cole Rosario's out of the conversation temporarily. So you definitely would like to see Jaden Dawson step into a more expanded role of being another guy like that who can come in and knock down some perimeter shots and really help out, in that area. Because Kansas was, besides Darren Peterson, Kansas was not hitting very many threes tonight, especially early in the game. And in totality, Kansas only ended up hitting 5 threes, and 2 of those came from Darren Peterson. So, Trey White goes 0-4 from 3. Melvin Council goes 0-3. If those 2 guys aren't hitting and it's only Darren Peterson, then you're really looking to basically Jamari McDowell, whatever you get from Marco Jackson, which tonight he did hit 1, and then whatever you're able to get from a Jaden Dawson at that point. So obviously you don't expect Trey White to shoot that poorly tonight, and we haven't really touched on him. Scoring standpoint, he really struggled tonight, but still was able to make his impact in certain areas. And I think what we saw from Trey White tonight was he was able to get to the free throw line and still score from there, right? I mean, he was at one point 0 of 6 from the floor, in the game. He ends 1 for 8, but he got to the line a couple times, still was able to contribute there and went 4-4 from the free throw line and scored 6 points. Similar conversation with Melvin Council, who also was not shooting the ball particularly well tonight. He had that crazy circus shot that somehow went in. I have no idea how to scored on that one. But he ended up with only 6 points too, right? So you weren't getting those guys scoring a lot, but that was obviously counteracted tonight by Darren Peterson in the first half and then Flory Bidunga in the second half really taking over with the loss.
A week ago, if somebody would have said to you, Nick Springer, Trey White, and Melvin Council are going to go 4 for 19 in this game against Baylor, what percentage chance would you have given Kansas to win at all, much less win by 18?
You would be worried. I certainly would not think they would win by, if they were to still win in that scenario, you wouldn't expect it to be by double digits, I don't think. And so, yeah, that obviously is something that I would not have felt confident about at the time, because Trey White has been, I think Trey White specifically really has been that steady guy to score. I'm seeing some conversation about Dylan Edwards in the chat. Dylan Edwards was at the game tonight.
Yep.
We'll see what that means going forward. If he ends up joining KU football, obviously we'll talk about that.
And if you want, flip. I mean, I'm not saying right now. Stick around right now. But after this, go to our last episode, and we talked pretty extensively about Dylan Edwards, what that could mean, and sort of our opinions on that potential position.
And if he does join Kansas officially, you can expect us to talk plenty more about that as well. So yeah, be on the lookout for that, which is another reason why you should subscribe to the channel as well, so you'll stay up to date on the KU football offseason moves as well. So, but yeah, again, in this game, it was Trey White struggling shooting, but obviously still made his impact felt. And then Melvin Council, he's still so quick, Kevin, that even when he's not shooting, he still creates and still can be somebody that affects the offense in a positive way.
That lob was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah. Dude, okay.
Even with Flory trailing, I still thought Council was going to go to the rim and try and get that thing down. And what an unselfish play. But that's the thing. I mean, Melvin Council helps. I know a lot of people say, oh, right now you've got kind of the oil and vinegar thing going with he and Darren Peterson, where it feels like they aren't quite comfortable meshing together just yet. But I think one of the areas where Council really helps Peterson is he's able to take so much off of his plate as a ball handler. And I think when you look at tonight's game where Melvin didn't score well, he had some good looks. It's funny you said he knocked down one of the ones that wasn't a good look that went in on that shot. But if you're going to have Melvin Council dish out 5 assists to 1 turnover and play the kind of defense that he's able to play and provide the energy that he provides, he's still going to be an effective player. I think obviously Trey White, you'd like to see him knock down the shots that he got. But at the same time, he's still found a way to impact the game without scoring. He had some tough rebounds, I thought, in this one, Nick. Winds up with a couple steals as well. And so that was one of the things that I thought coming into this year would be Trey White's strength is, okay, he doesn't need to score. He can check different boxes as they need it. He's been a lot better than that, and obviously a lot better shooter than that, and has become arguably Kansas's second best scorer to Darren Peterson. But I still think that that's in his wheelhouse where even if the shots aren't falling, you're not going to look up and say, man, like Trey White didn't impact this game at all.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my expectation for Trey White was that he might be a decent scorer coming into the season. And obviously, I think he's far exceeded that up to this point. And in fact, this was really his first game where he kind of struggled from the floor in quite some time. So I would expect him to go back to being more that reliable type of scorer that he's been over the course of this season. And then again, if you're able to add in more of what we saw from Flory tonight, where he's going to average, 17 and 9 over the course of conference play, that's huge. And then you lump in Darren Peterson, who I suspect, Kevin, that there will be a handful of games. And obviously tonight we saw it in the first half. In the second half, he only ended up playing 7 minutes and they didn't need him as much. But I suspect that there's probably going to be a handful of games over the course of conference play where it's just a Darren Peterson game where he's just going to go out and just give you 30, right? Yeah. And, he did that in the first half, and then Kansas, and then he did, they didn't really need him in the second half once they got back up to a 20-point lead, 18-point lead down the stretch. But I suspect that there's going to be some games where it's just, okay, it's just the Darren Peterson game tonight, and he's just going to go do it for, 30 minutes.
Yeah, I was interested when he had 20 at half. I was like, I'm not saying I thought, is he going to make a run at 40 necessarily, but it was still a close game at that point. And so I was interested to see, was he going to run it? Is it Council's 36 that he had against NC State?
36.
And so I was wondering if he was going to do that. Obviously didn't wind up playing as many minutes in the second half. But fear not, there's going to be a game in this season where Kansas is going to need Darren Peterson a little bit more. Darren Peterson is going to be able to score, and you're going to see him, I think, make a run at that 36 mark and potentially make a run at, I forget, I know Wiggins was in the 40s against West Virginia. Was it 42, 44?
43, I think, off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And then there was the Elijah Johnson game against Iowa State where he had I don't know how many. I think he had 39 in that one.
Yeah. So I think he'll get a chance to make a run at something like that at some point. It's just KU didn't wind up needing him to do it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, Kevin. I mean, I'm not much of a betting man, but I think if you were to ask me, would you bet if Darren Peterson is going to score 40 points in a game this season? I would say I would take the yes on that. I would say, yeah, I think he's going to get to 40 at some point.
Honestly, watch that BYU game. because for those of you who don't know, Peterson and AJ Dybansa went absolutely at it a year ago in high school. I think Peterson wound up with like 59 or something like that, and those two, I mean, they're competing to be the number 1 pick in the draft. They both have pretty good college basketball teams as well, and so that could be one of those games where you wind up looking up at the end and Dybansa's got 35 and Peterson's got 43 or something like that. I think that game could be really, really fun, sort of must-watch television.
Look at this. Joseph doing some live research for us here. Said he had 41.
41. I said 42 or 40, 44. Nick said 43. So we were all around it without actually hitting it.
Yeah. But again, I would think he's going to have a chance to potentially score 40 at some point this season. Joseph also asking, does he play minutes to score 40 though? I think I think so. I mean, I think he's fine. I mean, what we've seen
honestly tonight, the way he looked, and if this had been a close game, if it was within 3 or 5 or something like that, I think you would have seen him pushing into the 30-some minutes and probably pushing into the 30-some points, you would think.
Yeah. I mean, again, watching the last 2 games, the Iowa State game with what he was doing just from a physical standpoint in that game, and then what he was doing tonight and how smooth he was getting into the mid-range and hitting some jumpers, like, yeah, you can tell that he has found another gear and kind of gotten back to his old self, I think, over these last couple of games, which is a great sign for Kansas. We do need to take one more quick break. I want to talk about what this means going forward, though, because, okay, you've now locked in 2 pretty good wins, both at home, but you got 2 road games coming up on the horizon for Kansas and what this might mean for them going forward into February as well. We'll talk about that and more coming up next.
I'm Brett Goodwin, one of the owners of The Learning Tree. The Learning Tree is a neighborhood toy store in Prairie Village, Kansas. This has been here in this location since 2000s, and my husband Alan and I purchased the store in 2023. Alan and I grew up in families where we've always wanted to have a business together. Alan grew up, for instance, his parents had a jewelry store. I worked in a local toy store here in Prairie Village when I was growing up. When this opportunity happened in 2023, we knew right away we wanted to contact them and pursue the store. We wouldn't have been able to get the store without the team at Emprise Bank. From the day we contacted them, they knew what we needed to do, which was very helpful. I would absolutely recommend the team at Emprise Bank to anyone looking to secure a business. We worked with Emprise from day one. They were extremely helpful. They were always great resources. We talk to them frequently. They know the area. They're very friendly. We know who we're going to talk with, and they know what we need to do. We hope we'll see you at the Learning Tree.
This is the Paid Podcast, a live edition of the show on a Friday night. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're joining us live on YouTube, as always, you should be doing 3 things. You should be subscribing to the channel here at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN, liking the video, and sharing a comment. If you have a question, if you have any other thoughts, drop it in the comments. We'll react to it. We'll talk about it here live. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Kevin, by the way, I didn't even get a chance to ask you really, are you a fan of the Friday night basketball? What were your thoughts on that?
No, I don't like it. I like the result, obviously, but I mean, those of you who know, I'm on the Verbal Commitment podcast, and so I'm used to going out to Friday night football games. Obviously, this part of the season, there's Friday night basketball games. I like having Friday nights off to be able to go do that stuff, and so I was not a fan of it, but it seemed like a good atmosphere at Allen Fieldhouse. The fans seemed to really enjoy it. Love Gus Johnson. Nick is a little mad at Gus Johnson for a certain call right now, but you know, it is what it is.
Gus Johnson may or may not have stolen my flow bar for bar. If you're a real one and you happen to be listening to Rock Chalk Sports Talk back in the day with myself and Derek Johnson, we had this debate when Flory Bidunga committed to Kansas originally a couple years ago about what to call it when Flory makes a dunk. Okay. And if you listen to Brian Haney on the Jayhawk Radio Network, he'll say, I think he has said Flory flush before, or something like that. And at the time, I wasn't fully aware of how to pronounce Flory's last name. So I thought it was Bidunga. So I was saying Bidunga dunk. Bidunga dunk. I think Bidunga dunk is awesome. Well, Gus Johnson just took that and turned it into Bidunga dunk. And so he stole my flow. He stole what I created.
Copyright coming.
Yeah. Although Joe has a good point. Stole or popularized. That's actually a good point. Maybe I should thank Gus Johnson for popularizing.
You've seen that commercial where the person says, "You just took my idea. You just did this." He's like, "No, I did this." So that's what Gus Johnson did. Nick gave an idea, people weren't listening, and Gus Johnson did this, and people are listening.
Yeah, the Bidunga dunk, I love it. I think it's a fantastic phrase. I think it should be used more often. Every time he dunks, I'm going to say it. I'm going to tweet it probably. Bidunga dunk. I love it. And obviously he had a lot of that tonight against Baylor with the performance he had.
Still, I know we brought it up earlier in the show, but it still cracks me up that he had a wide open dunk and instead passed the ball out to Elmarco Jackson for 3. Elmarco made it. It worked out, but it was like no, yes.
Well, actually, the one that I thought was the funniest, Kevin, was there was one where I think it was Darren Peterson. He throws it to Flory. Flory catches it, but doesn't dunk and comes down. And there's 3 Baylor defenders all around him. And everybody, it's like one of those freeze frame moments where everybody was just standing there and Flory's standing there and he's like, wait a minute, I can just dunk it. And he just dunks it. That was the one that was the funniest to me, was when it was it was one of those record scratch, freeze frame moments. Oh, you're wondering why I'm here. Well, I'm here to dunk because nobody stopped me from dunking. So yeah, really strong performance from Flory. Obviously, probably the highlight of the game for him. 23 points again with 11 rebounds. Also was credited with 5 blocks. You mentioned earlier, Kevin, but Bryson Tiller also got active with some blocks. He had several blocks as well tonight. So he had a strong performance. But Kansas now with 2 consecutive really, really big-time statement wins against number 2 Iowa State earlier in the week, beating them by 21, and then obviously tonight against Baylor with the big win. Now the question becomes, and we kind of talked about this a little bit after the Iowa State game too, but I think now you can kind of build off that even more, is, okay, now you're going to be going on the road. It's going to be a 10 p.m. tip-off, by the way, on Tuesday night for KU, 10 p.m. Central Time against Colorado. I have no idea whose idea that was. That's so stupid because it's still a 9 p.m. tip-off in Colorado. What are we doing? It's so stupid. So in case you're wondering, by the way, Kevin and I are not going to be doing a live show after the Colorado game because it's going to be 12:30 in the morning. So we'll have a reaction to that show. We'll have a reaction to that game. It won't be live on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, I guess, by that point. And then obviously the game that I think everyone's going to have circled will be next Saturday when you go to Manhattan to take on K-State. Obviously, that's been a bit of a tough place for Kansas to play in the past couple seasons. It is generally the only game on the schedule that K-State cares about. And especially now because K-State's been struggling, that they're gonna especially want that one really bad. But this is your chance to go on the road now next week for a couple games and prove that you can build off of what you've been doing at home and do it on the road, especially in that K-State game. And then obviously you get BYU to end January, and then you get into that stretch of that we've been kind of talking about as sort of being in the distant future, but now it's in the not so distant future, which is that stretch of games where you play 4 top 15 teams out of 5 games, including at Texas Tech. You're going to go at Iowa State, also Arizona as well. So that's a big stretch. So, the funny thing is, Kevin, we talked about this at the start of conference play, and I kind of want to circle back to this. I think at the time I had told you okay, for me to feel pretty good about where KU's at, they probably need to get through January with 1, maybe only 2 losses in January. Well, they have now set themselves up to do that. Despite taking the lumps against UCF and West Virginia, they now have a chance potentially to do that, with these next 2 games against Colorado and K-State before you play BYU at home. And so if you get through this little, week of 2 road games and then you come back home and they're able to beat BYU heading into February, all of a sudden you're kind of back where I think I would have hoped you would have been. Now, did I expect 2 losses to be against UCF and West Virginia? No, but if you still get through the rest of this month with only those 2 losses on your record, all of a sudden you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, and you would have wins against contenders in Iowa State and BYU, which obviously that helps you in the standings as well, especially since KU does have to go to Ames still, but KU doesn't play BYU again. So you would have that one up on BYU if you finish at the same place in the standings. Colorado is going to be tough, Nick, in that KU has struggled at times against big teams, and Colorado at times is huge. I mean, and when I say that, their most used lineup in conference play, Nick, has, I think, Rancic at the 3. Rancic, who's 6'11", plays the 3. Bangot Dak, who's 7 foot tall. And then at center, you've got Elijah Malone, who's 6'10", 270. So you wind up having 3 guys 6'10 plus on the court at the same time, with the center being a guy who's 6'10", 270, obviously a lot bigger than Flory in that circumstance. you would expect with a lineup like that, Colorado hasn't been as good defending the arc. And so you would hope that that would be a game where KU knocks down some outside shots. But this could be a tough game for KU, especially Colorado's going to have the big bodies to kind of punish KU on the glass at times, and they're going to have some big lineups out there that where maybe you're not going to be able to find, lanes for Flory or lanes for certain guys to get to the rim. And so I'm interested to see how that game plays out. Of course, we've seen, over the last however long with Colorado, it's tough playing altitude too. And you mentioned the time and all of those things. I know, some people have mentioned it in the chat, hey, I think we blow out Colorado. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a really close game and you wind up needing a bucket or two late to finish this thing off, because I think Colorado is kind of an awkward matchup, plus the late game, plus at altitude. I think that this – I hate to say a trap game, but I think this could be one of those where maybe it's a little trickier than people realize.
Well, and look, despite the fact that Kansas has just picked up 2 pretty dominant wins at home, they haven't really proven it on the road yet. I mean, right? So that's not to say that I don't think they can, because I would still expect them to win against Colorado. But the point being, you've lost against one mediocre team for sure in West Virginia. And, I think I would say a good UCF team, like a solid UCF team on the road, but you still haven't proven that you can go win on the road. And so that's going to be a hurdle in and of itself, I think, potentially going into this Colorado game. Now, once you clear that, I think, I'll start to really believe in that. And then obviously the one against K-State too, but that'll be a challenge. And that continues to be the main question. And this win tonight against Baylor was obviously huge for Kansas in a lot of ways. They were able to get Flory activated. DP was fantastic, like we talked about earlier in the show, but it was another home game, right? And so now that still leaves that final question, remaining of, okay, can you go do this on the road, right? And it kind of works out that you get, Colorado, who is, as you outlined, still could be a tricky matchup, but obviously it's not like you're going to go play at Arizona here. Or at Houston or at Iowa State here off the bat. So a chance to regather after this home stretch of getting these 2 big wins, and then try to build off that for the second half of January.
Yeah, and again, if you're able to win those 2 games on the road and then find a way to beat BYU at Allen Fieldhouse, you exit January kind of in an ideal situation for where you want to be. Yeah. And you're hot at that point, and you feel like guys are starting to come together. Probably, it's amazing what a difference. And I get we're wrapping up here, Nick, here in the next few minutes, but what a difference a week makes, because you have the game against West Virginia, and that was about as bad as KU has looked all year, and to lose that game the way that you lost it. And to have the stretch that was so bad in that game that West Virginia just kind of took it over. And then you have the team meeting. And I'm not saying all of this is because the team meeting, but you have the team meeting. Kansas refocuses, looks unbelievable against Iowa State, and then follows it up with this performance against Baylor. I think that Kansas is starting to click in all the right ways. And defensively, they aren't switching the way that they did that was getting punished earlier. They aren't really even, hedging the same way that they did against West Virginia, which they did in that loss. It's more, hey, we're switching 3, showing 2. And I think that that's been a key part of Kansas's defense really coming on. Look, Baylor had 2 guys really scored tonight. Again, Agnew, hit a couple threes late to make it, look like he had 9 points, but they came after the game was way over. But this exact same Baylor team scored 94? Yeah, 94 at Oklahoma State in their last game. And so I'm not saying they're always going to go out and score like that, but I'm saying it meant something to hold this team to 62 and to play defense the way that Kansas did. It meant something to hold down Iowa State's offense the way that Kansas's defense did. And Nick, we've always talked about, if this team is going to go a long way, it needs to start on the defensive end. The offense, you're still going to have clunky stretches. You're still going to have times where guys aren't sharing the ball. It's not moving quite as well. It feels more one-on-one. You hope that you get a little bit more of that out. But generally speaking, this is not as good an offensive team as some teams are at the top of college basketball. This isn't an elite offensive team. I think they can be an elite defensive team. And so what you see in the last 2 weeks or the last 2 games, I think are really positive steps in that direction.
Well, and Bill Self has said it himself, going back to before the Iowa State game, saying that they need to become more like junkyard dogs, right? And
Yep.
I think that absolutely is the path forward. And it seems like that messaging has gotten through that, yes, it starts on the defensive end of the floor. If you play connected, if you play strong on that end, it can lead to offensive opportunities and it can create for your offense as well. So, yeah, I mean, we've been saying it all season long. This team needs to be a defense first team first and foremost if they want to be at their absolute best, right? Because you've got obviously a dynamic scorer in Darren Peterson. You've got some guys that can be creative with Melvin Council, and obviously then you've got somebody in Flory Bidunga who can flash as a big time, dunker at various points throughout the game. But the bottom line is it starts on the defensive end. And yeah, you mentioned it with Baylor. Kevin, not only that, Baylor scored 56 points and a half against Oklahoma State in that game.
Yeah.
They had 56 points with like 2 minutes left in the game tonight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a very, very impressive performance from Kansas defensively, and they'll need to continue to bring that level of energy and push forward through the rest of this conference schedule because, again, all of a sudden, if you start to think about going to Colorado, then beating K-State as well in Manhattan, which that obviously will be a pretty big hurdle to clear. And then you get BYU at home. Then you go into that tough stretch. But if you can win a couple of those games, you're going to be stacking not only wins, but wins against high quality opponents. Then all of a sudden you're back in the conversation of, okay, what could you be in the NCAA tournament, 3 seed maybe, or wherever that may be. I know Evan Miyakawa, for those that don't know, he's a kind of a college basketball analytics guy. I think he'd said that he thought KU might be like a 3 or 4 seed, but would be a very dangerous 3 or 4 seed. That's possible too, as well. So yeah, overall, like you said, Kevin, it's pretty impressive what the difference a week can make in college basketball from where you thought your team was to where they are at this present moment if you're Kansas. And again, it just comes down to continuing to build off that and pushing forward. And you would like to see it again on the road, and KU's going to have that chance here coming up this week.
Yeah. With however positive you feel this week, Nick, where would you be at if KU winds up winning both games next week on the road? Even if they're close games at Colorado and at K-State, where would you sit?
Oh, I would be over the moon because KU hasn't beaten K-State in Manhattan in what, 3 years? They haven't beaten Jerome Tang in Manhattan, I don't think. So that in and of itself would just make me thrilled because I should probably not say what I'm thinking about.
By the way, I said that KU, probably not going to get Flory as involved against Colorado with how big Colorado is. Who's not great on the interior this year? Kansas State.
K-State.
And so if you're wanting to take, you talked about what might be transferable and carry over for Flory from this game. It might not show up in KU's next game, but you might get to see a Flory game here in 2 games time.
Yeah, like I said, I would be over the moon just if KU beats K-State because they haven't done it in a couple of years in Manhattan. And again, I should probably withhold all of my thoughts on how I feel about K-State and Jerome Cornball Tang. But yes, please go win that game in Manhattan. And then I would feel so good about Kansas because then you get a week off to prepare for BYU, right?
Yep.
You'll have a week that every team on the conference schedule has that 1 week where they have a week off. For Kansas, that'll be the week after they play K-State to lead up to BYU, which I love that because, if K-State, it's an emotional game one way or the other, you get a chance to hit the reset after that one, whether you win or lose, before you play BYU and head into that tough stretch. So, yeah, if we're sitting here in, next Saturday, 8 days from now, talking after the KU K-State game, which I'm sure we'll have our live show after that one coming up next Saturday. I will be doing jumping jacks. I'll be doing cartwheels. I'll be doing anything if KU wins that game at K-State in Manhattan, just because of the fact that, as Derek mentioned in the chat, Self hasn't beaten Tang in Manhattan. That must change. Yes, that must change. And I'm willing to go as far as to say that will change. So if anybody wants to clip this,
the last game that KU won in Manhattan, I believe a KU All-America guard hit a big shot like right at the end to carry him. Could we potentially see an All-America guard wearing a Kansas jersey finishing up a game and finishing things off in Manhattan? That would be something to see.
Are you telling me Marco Jackson's going to be an All-American?
I think he's having a great year, Nick.
And with that, I think that's a good way to end tonight's show. Really appreciate everybody for joining us tonight. Thanks so much, everybody that hung out with us in the live chat. We so appreciate all your comments, your thoughts, your questions. Once again, you should be subscribing on YouTube at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN so you can join us for more live shows over the course of this season. Like the video. We appreciate everybody that left comments. Joseph says, would love to continue the momentum. Rock Chalk. I would too as well. Always a pleasure to hear from Dave as well. Payheed. Yeah, Payheed Baylor. Baylor did not pay heed tonight.
Pay heed to all of you guys entering the chat each and every time we do these live shows. Really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, it's an absolute blast. We love doing it. We're excited about doing it again. Again, we're not going to be live after the Colorado game because it'll be 12:30 a.m. But we will be live certainly coming up next Saturday after the KU State game, and be on the lookout as well for more KU football talk as well. We're going to be getting into. Somebody asked us, I think, in our comments after our last show. We are going to get into position breakdowns as we get more into spring football, where we'll be talking about each position group. We'll get a chance to go out and see KU in person on the practice field as well once we get into spring football. So be on the lookout for all that stuff. We are going to probably this week have a bit of a transfer portal wrap-up show where we talk more about the transfer portal class for Kansas in totality. Obviously, we had some comments about Dylan Edwards as well. If that commitment comes to fruition, we'll be talking about that. So we got you covered on KU football offseason stuff as well as Kansas basketball for the remainder of this season. But once again, thanks so much for joining us tonight. For Kevin Flaherty, I'm Nick Springer, and we'll talk to you again very soon. See ya.